Attack on Titan. One of the most popular and well-produced anime of all time, and captivating its viewers with likable characters and a story so compelling that on my first viewing, I watched all of season 1, which is 10 hours by the way, in one sitting on a school night. What happens when this media giant crosses paths with one of the most played multiplayer horror games of all time? You get the Attack on Titan and Dead by Daylight crossover. Despite not being its own chapter, this event is one of the most influential updates in Dead by Daylight's history. Before we get into that, let's start with discussing what was even added for this event. There were 10 total skins, the survivor ones being for Eren, Mikasa, Levi, Annie, Armin, Historia, Hanji, and Kenny. There were 2 killer skins, one for the Armored Titan as well as the Warhammer Titan. There were also 5 charms you could get. 4 of these were obtainable with the purchase of the skins, and the last one you could obtain if you logged in during the event. The lobby was also changed to the Shiganshina district after the Colossal Titan destroyed the gate, like you should do to the subscribe button. Do me a favor and beat the piss out of that big red button for me. Considering the event was a cosmetic only update and didn't change the gameplay at all, there was a substantial amount of stuff added. Now that you know what the crossover was, let's talk about why it made a big impact. The Attack on Titan x Dead by Daylight event was influential because it brought back old players, brought in new players, and gave insight on future licenses that can make it into the game. Everyone suffers from burnout to some extent. For me, I can grind a game almost exclusively for around 2 months before I get burnt out and look for another game. Dead by Daylight is no exception to this trend. After I finished grinding the year 6 anniversary event, which ended in June, I was over DBD. I ended up taking a break after dumping my soul into grinding out anniversary cakes. Then, one day in July, I was scrolling through YouTube when I came across Skirm's video titled Attack on Titan x Dead by Daylight. I gave the video a watch, and immediately after I went to update my game and hop on. I had a newfound urge to grind the game again. I even went as far and bought a handful of the new cosmetics before even loading into a match. My friends who aren't even AOT fans got back into the game too because they saw me back on, which caused a ripple effect. A similar story can be told for many other players. Burnout occurs and they don't come back until they have a reason to. This event served as that reason for many players. There is a counter argument that can be made though. If players are brought back due to an update, then what's different about them coming back for the Attack on Titan event than a chapter update? The difference lies in who the update appeals to. A chapter update adds a new killer and survivor and tends to attract players that play the game frequently. These can be casual players all the way up to more competitive and serious players. This, however, excludes a subsection of casual players which play exclusively because of the licenses in the game. These players wouldn't have come back to the game for the anniversary event because the dredge is original and they wouldn't have any sentimental value to him. On the other hand, these players would have attachment to Attack on Titan and would come back for that crossover event. This is just a small fraction of what makes this event influential. The influx of new players brought to the game also contributes to how influential the event is. Attack on Titan is a widely popular show and manga with fans all over the world, specifically in Japan. This is, for the most part, an untapped market that Behavior is trying to break into. There have been updates in the past such as Shattered Bloodlines in the fall of 2018 and more recently The Cursed Legacy in winter of 2019 that would appeal to the Japanese audience. These 2 chapters are based on Japanese horror, and Behavior would have used these to tear down the wall and break themselves into the Japanese market. Matthew Kote, in an interview, said, "Our Japanese player base is well above 1 million strong. They are also among the most dedicated and engaged communities we have anywhere in the world." This interview was back in fall of 2020, over 2 years ago at the time of recording this video. It's safe to say that those 1 million players have probably doubled or even tripled at the very least since then. The AOT crossover would have brought more of these Japanese players to Dead by Daylight, a game that they most likely wouldn't have heard of up until this event. Even players that aren't big into horror, Japanese, or people from other parts of the world would be attracted by the crossover. While Attack on Titan is considered a horror show, it's not the typical jump-scary hacker slasher that is associated with the genre. This, in and of itself, would have turned many potential players away from the game, but this crossover helps with bridging that gap to new players. Behavior is constantly adding licensed content to Dead by Daylight. This content has often been common horror IPs such as Halloween and more recently Resident Evil. Apart from Ash vs. Evil Dead, which is more comedy than horror in my opinion, there isn't anything that would appeal to a non-horror audience. Granted, Dead by Daylight at its core is a horror game, but I think most players would agree with me when I say that after the first 10 hours of playtime, it becomes less of a horror game and more of a strategic chess match. As mentioned earlier, Attack on Titan, a horror anime of all things, isn't a scary show by any means. Once you get to season 3 of the show, which is one of the best seasons of television ever produced, it loses any aspect that would put it into the horror genre anyways. This opens the door for many potential IPs to be considered for future updates. Back in April of 2021, Behavior released a poll with various licenses on it and asked players what they would like to see added in the future. Among the list of names was Attack on Titan. There were also a couple other IPs worth noting, such as The Last of Us, Death Note, and Tokyo Ghoul. All of these, in my opinion, aren't the typical horror you would think of, but here they are, listed next to licenses such as Friday the 13th, Five Nights at Freddy's, and The Shining. The point I'm trying to make is that by Behavior throwing Attack on Titan into DBD tells us that they aren't limiting themselves to traditional horror material, that they are keeping their shopping list of IPs long and diverse. Attack on Titan, being the first anime to come to Dead by Daylight, expands that potential shopping list tenfold, keeping many possibilities for future IPs on the table. In conclusion, the Attack on Titan x Dead by Daylight event brought back old players, brought in new players, and gave insight on future licenses that can make it into Dead by Daylight. Players who've suffered from burnout came back, causing a ripple effect with their friends and their friends' friends playing the game again. Casual players who play the game for the media that is a part of it would also have a reason to come back, despite only cosmetic content being added. The Japanese player base would have another reason to get into the game for the first time, as well as giving players who are gun-shy of traditional horror material a reason to play. The light shed on potential future licenses is immense. Attack on Titan being the first anime to join the entity's realm opens the door to many IPs that the community once swept under the rug. The AOT crossover event did all of this without even adding new game-changing content. For what some might consider a forgettable event, it left an impact far greater than what was initially thought.